Hello and welcome to Family of Fear. My name is Jaron Lewis, and tonight we're going to be talking about found footage horror films. Sometimes these films were very amateurish, and I think a lot of people got mad about how cheesy they were, but I think that they helped a lot of independent filmmakers create things on a low budget and kind of get creative with their scares. That being said, big production companies and independent filmmakers were just pumping these babies out after films like The Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity took off. Paranormal Activity was really the one that kind of shot this whole subgenre into the mainstream. However, I think the first found footage horror film was Cannibal Holocaust. Yeah, look that one up if you're bored. Within all that glorious shaky camera work, I think we found a few gems that really kept my love of the subgenre alive, and I still rewatch them all the time. That being said, I think these films are best watched at home, and I think now's the perfect time to do it. These movies don't really translate well when you're watching them on, like, IMAX. That doesn't make any sense. It's a found footage film. It's a home video. I will be covering 5 fantastic found footage films that you need to see, and if you have seen them, you should watch them again, especially if you're stuck at home right now. So, let's get to the movies. First up is The Devil's Pass. This film is about the Dyatlov Pass incident, where in 1959, 9 Russian hikers went up to the Ural Mountains and died in mysterious circumstances. 6 of them died of hypothermia, while one of them was missing their eyeballs, one was missing their tongue, and the other one had a fractured skull. The government had no idea what happened, and they closed the pass down for 3 years. Their deaths still remain a mystery. The Devil's Pass follows 5 college students who investigate the fate of the hikers. However, what they find might lead to their own demise. I like this film a lot because the story that it's based around is very interesting, and if you haven't looked up anything on the Dyatlov Pass, you should. It's very confusing and very scary. I think the film itself kind of carries with it all the conspiracy theories that people had around this mystery, and I think it's kind of fun to explore that within found footage. Fix me, Jesus, fix me. Next we have The Sacrament. A reporter for Vice News gets in contact with his long-lost sister. She invites him out to a compound where she's been staying. He goes, and he brings a documentary crew with him. When they get there, they're greeted with armed guards, and they meet a man who is called Father. What they soon realize is that this is a cult, and that Father's intentions are not peace and love, but maybe something much more sinister. If you haven't figured it out yet, this film is based off the People's Temple in Jonestown, which was led by a charismatic cult leader named Jim Jones, who eventually commanded his followers to commit mass suicide by drinking Flavor Aid mixed with cyanide. 909 people died from the incident. This is basically if that happened today and we had a documentary crew filming it. It's very scary, very intense, and if you love true crime, I think you'll like this one a lot too.
Jesus Christ, what's happening to us? Why is this happening?
Next we have Grave Encounters. Grave Encounters is a paranormal investigative TV show, almost like Ghost Hunters International. A group of people, hosted by Lance Preston, go into a haunted asylum looking for ghosts, but this time, they actually find ghosts. This movie is bonkers, and I think it's probably the best example of a found footage horror film within that whole time period of them just pumping out different found footage films. I think that this movie is personally one of my favorites. It is very scary and has a lot of fun, creative scenes with the camera work and like how they just moved it around. It was so good that in fact it actually inspired a almost fan-driven sequel that almost focused on the idea of this movie being like such a realistic found footage film that people wanted to figure out if it was real or not. I think number 2 kind of gets a little lost with its story. However, there are some really creative scenes and some crazy monsters in it. So if you want, I'd check it out. Definitely watch the first Grave Encounters no matter what. And number 2 on our list is called Troll Hunter. Now, Troll Hunter is a Norwegian found footage film about 3 college students who are investigating someone poaching bears in the area. But what they soon realize is this man's not hunting bears, but he's hunting trolls. They don't believe him, they follow him around, and they find out that, yeah, trolls are real. This movie is very cool, and there's some big monsters in it. This is probably one of the most ambitious found footage films ever made, due to the fact of how big the monsters are and how much they actually just go for it. I think this is a great example of what the subgenre can do and just not rely on jump scares or just shaky visuals. I think this one can actually just say, hey, we're going to tell a story in this format and it's going to be cool. This film comes all the way from Norway, and so I enjoyed it immensely, even with subtitles. I thought the action was cool, and I thought just everything about it was a very entertaining film. Now, last on our list, and probably the most popular out of all of them, is called REC, REC is a Spanish film that follows a reporter and her cameraman who are tagging along the night shift of the local fire department. Their first call is at an apartment building where an old lady is apparently having some violent convulsions. When they get there, they realize the situation is much more dire, and so does the government outside because they get quarantined inside this spooky-ass apartment. This film is probably the scariest on the list. I would say that there's a lot of jump scares in this one. It is intense, it is claustrophobic, and it is very well done. You have a crazy-ass monster at the end of it, which is played by Javier Botet, which is awesome. He does an incredible job, and it was actually my first film that I saw that had him in it. This film was so successful that it spawned 3 sequels and an American remake, which also spawned a sequel. The American remake's called Quarantine, which most people have actually seen Quarantine. However, REC, even though they're pretty much the exact same film, except one of them's in Spanish and the other one's in English, REC is much scarier. The Kill Count just did a video on this film, and I definitely recommend watching it if you just want to see how crazy it gets. If you don't think you can stomach it, watch that. However, I would recommend watching the movie first just so you can relive all the goriness. If you made it this far, I appreciate you, and I'll appreciate you even more if you liked the video. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe, and if you have any ideas on something that you want to see, or another series on found footage films, leave a comment below.